Today I'm going to talk about my game plan for the Chicago Half Marathon, but first, let's do some work. All right, last quarter of the day, 5K pace, building up to mile pace. Let's go. .16 miles, 7 minutes, 47 seconds per mile on average for the entire workout. But today's speed workout was a set of intervals, 3 times a half-mile interval, rest, a quarter-mile interval, rest, and another quarter-mile interval, and then rest. And so doing that 3 times, so 9 total reps, 90 seconds of rest in between each rep. Feeling pretty good. Working at 5K speeds or faster, so enjoying some of the start of the taper. So the workout wasn't quite as long, only about 3 miles total of work, but definitely getting some of that speed work in there and feeling pretty good about it overall. It was a good speed workout to kind of push me into the Chicago Half Marathon for the weekend. And I mentioned it a little bit in some of the videos last week, talking with my coach about preparations for it. And I got to talk to her a lot more about it after some of the information we got from the long run, or kind of the failed long run from last weekend. And so we had gone into that run thinking that we were going to fuel me with about 300 milligrams of salt per hour. I had about that, and I definitely feel like that was not enough. And so she's recommending that I bump up to about a goal of about 500 milligrams per hour activity of salt. So that's going to be kind of like the big change going into this weekend. But overall, it's a Sunday race. So Saturday would normally be my long run day, so I have to switch up. I'm going to have a little bit of a shakeout run, 3 miles with at the top of every mile, about 30 seconds of marathon pace, just to kind of make sure my body's accustomed to what I want to go out at. And so, because for this race, what I want to do is go out at about the 6 minute 35 to 6:40 pace. That's going to be tough, I think, because of the fact that their pacers stop at 1:30. So there's no like 125 pacer. There's no 120 pacer. It's just 1:30. So I'm going to have to go out ahead of all the pace groups, which is the first time I think I've ever had to do that in a race. And I have a feeling that a lot of the people that are kind of going to be in that area at the start are going to be going out much faster than I want to go, whether it's nerves or just because they're running faster races than I am. So that's going to be tough. And so my goal is, even if I'm down to marathon pace of 650 per mile for like the first mile or even 2 miles, I think that's going to be fine. I want to make sure that I'm not getting out there too fast, and I'd rather make up the time later than go into deficit early because that 6:35 pace number is pretty close to my threshold number. And so if I go much faster than that at mile 1, that's going to create big problems for me later on. So that's going to be kind of the big goal. The other goal is to definitely negative split, not because a lot of people think of negative split as like, oh, look how strong I was during this race. But I feel like negative split is a strategy for success. And so it's not a indicator of exceptionalism. It's an indicator of a reasonably run race to me. And so I definitely want to be working on negative split. Again, this time I do have a goal race in mind, the Chicago Marathon, in just a couple of weeks. So there's a lot of like tooling for that that's going on as well. I will be running with the calf 100 that I talked about earlier this week in some videos that I tried last week. I just really like the bump it gave me from the way that the caffeine hit me really fast, 100 milligrams of caffeine. It's a quick absorbing gel. It just hits you kind of all at once, so I really like that. Probably take that around mile 10. Around mile 5, I'm going to be trying something new. I know that like this race is going to be like a dry run for a lot of people, but I am using it as a last testing opportunity because again, like my salts or my electrolytes generally, I think were a big problem for me on my last very long run on a very hot day. So I'm going to overcompensate and see how that goes. I'll definitely do some like electrolyte loading the night before on Saturday. But then in addition to the Gatorade endurance drink that they're going to have on the course, which I'm going to estimate is going to give me about 400 milligrams of salt per hour if I take it along this strategy. I'm also going to bring a second gel, and I haven't decided if it's going to be the Unived, the regular formula. This one doesn't have caffeine in it, but it does have 131 milligrams of salt, so that's a nice amount. Or I might bring the Unived Elite with me, which it's much bigger. And so I've already complained about how big Martin gels are. This is just as tall, but like twice as wide almost. But this has a whopping 277 milligrams of sodium in it, plus a lot of sugars, plus a lot of other electrolytes in there. So in the event that I'm oversimplifying things and only looking at the sodium number, hopefully I'll be covered because of the other like stuff that's in there, magnesium, potassium, all the other kind of key electrolytes that your body needs on these longer runs. The goal for me on this run, I mean, and I was talking with coach, like you can kind of BS your way through an entire half marathon. I could probably take on no salt and kind of finish fine. But I want to see how I feel at the end of the race. If I kind of keep myself topped up on my electrolytes, on my sugars, taking a lot of energy or sports drink along the way. Now, my strategy normally for a half marathon would be to hit 2 water stops, maybe around mile 5, maybe around mile 10. But I'm thinking because there's Gatorade Endurance on the course, which I believe is what's going to be on the Chicago Marathon course, I'm going to try and take a different approach to it and use a lot of the frequent water stops as chances to kind of top up on sodium. And so 12 ounces of sports drink gives about 310 milligrams of sodium according to the Gatorade Endurance website. And so I estimate about 4 ounces in one of those like cups that you get along a race route. And hopefully you can get almost all 4 of those ounces in without sloshing too much of it around. So if I'm taking one every other rest stop or water stop that's along this route, and they're kind of spaced at odd like mile markers, I think what I'm going to end up doing is hitting the first one at 2.2, which seems early, but then hitting every other one. And if I just remember, hit the first one and then every other one, that's kind of easy math for me to remember. Then that'll put me at about 400. So I'll hit like the 2.2, the 5 point something, 7 point something, like around 10 miles and around 11.8. So 500 total milligrams of salt for hopefully less than an hour and a half, or about 400 milligrams per hour. That alone should be a pretty decent amount of salt for me. I don't think it'll be enough sugar for me though. And so that's why the other gels I think are going to be really important. I'm probably going to be overdoing it a little bit. So I'm also going to be worrying about gastrointestinal distress. So last week I kind of underfueled. This week I'm going to overfuel, see how my stomach handles that. I've never quite overfueled before. So trying a couple of new things, but I think that a race is really the only time I can really test this out. I mean, if I had 2 or 3 more weeks of long runs ahead, I could probably do it. But I think a race will have to do for this time. Other things that I'll be testing for the race. Now I have my normal selfie stick that I bring along with me for runs, but it's just, I think, too long to try and bring to a race as grand as the Chicago Marathon. So I'm gonna do something else. First thing is, I'm going to be bringing another new Insta360 1X. I think I broke this second one again from getting it wet. This one actually still turns on, but when I turn it on, even if I have an SD card in there, it doesn't recognize an SD card. So whether it's because I got it wet, this one took quite a few bumps for whatever reason. It's not working. On the plus side, I do have now 3 Insta360 1X batteries. But I'll need a new one of that, so I got the new one ready. And I'm gonna use this selfie stick, which is a lot shorter. It compacts down a lot further. This one I think I got when I bought a gimbal from Vautech. I'm not sure. I've had it for a long time. Never really thought much of it until I was starting to think about what am I gonna bring for the Chicago Marathon. This one, even though it looks pretty small, it extends quite a bit. So I'll get quite a bit of reach off of this selfie stick, and I'll test it out for the race to see how I like it, test some of the angles. I'm a little bit concerned about this round thing here, if that's gonna get in any of the shots. We'll see. Hopefully this will work. And then what I'll also do with it is I'll probably have the Insta360 Go on the quarter 20 mount that's on the bottom. So again, going kind of like dual lightsaber. I'm also thinking from like a long-term perspective, usually the times when I get this thing the most wet is when I could probably use the Insta360 Go camera anyway. So I'm gonna rely on that a little bit more heavily, but I'll kind of have the dual lightsaber this way too. So overall, it's a pretty tight package. It's pretty weighty, but not much. It's still lighter than what I'm normally used to. I'm losing quite a bit of reach in terms of the reach of the selfie stick, but this one is still pretty long. So I think that'll work. Most of the Chicago Marathon and most of the Chicago Half Marathon should be pretty tight packed anyway. So I won't have like a bunch of room, not like at the Tunnel Marathon I ran earlier this year in June, to kind of wave this huge selfie stick around anyway. So I think it'll be just long enough. So that's something else that I'll be testing for race day purposes as well. Race kit in terms of like what I'll be wearing. I think the weather is going to be very different this weekend than from what we might see at the Chicago Marathon. Still quite too far out from the Chicago Marathon to see what the weather is going to be like. But this weekend, the forecast calls for somewhat moderate temps, 60s and 70s at race time, but a significant chance of rain. Although I don't think it'll be hard rain, but maybe lightning. So we'll see what it's like warming up. I'll probably have to wear lots of rain layers, but then again, last year before the Chicago Marathon, it rained quite a bit and it was really cold before it got very hot. And so it could be a great kind of way of testing out what I'm wearing for the Chicago Marathon. It'll be an interesting race, one way or the other. I think regardless of the time, I think there'll be a lot to learn from a couple of other variables that I'm tweaking. And ultimately, I'm going to try to remember to have fun with it. I think a lot of you guys are going to be out there. So if you guys see me, please feel free to say hi. Even if I'm warming up, don't worry about that. Always love to say hi to everybody at big races when I see you guys. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the corrals after, in the finishing area afterwards. I think there's going to be pizza. There's going to be beer. It's like after a Little League game. So it'll be a lot of fun, I think. For all of you guys that are running the half marathon this weekend, good luck to you. For the rest of you, if you have any questions about any of the stuff that I'm playing around with or kind of half marathons in general, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys more about it down there. Before I go, I want to remind you guys about the charity run for the week. Ryan Schultz is going to be running the Savannah Marathon in November and raising money for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. I donate $70 to his fundraising efforts. I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?